Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Intuitive Framework, where I explain some things that are related to your intuition and how is it a powerful source to leading it towards your highest best self. And in this episode today, I'm going to be talking about how your childhood and your inner child are actually the best ways to find inspiration, especially if you're a creative and trying to figure out what you want to do for a living. And this is not only just to share my stories, but also tips and suggestions of how to go about it. So, just to give some definitions out there, it's all about the concept of the inner child. And we often threw it around when we talk about like psychological terms in the self-help area and ways what happened in our childhood influence how we are today as adults, or like at least living in the world, because especially going through therapy and just try to understand the larger explanation, like they say psychologically, before the age of 7 you're very influenced easily because you're like a sponge absorbing your environment, what the adults around you are doing. That's often like the best, or I would definitely say like when you're younger, you're much more easy to learn like a new language better. You're more prone to learn new skills and stuff. Not to say you're becoming like an Olympian or like just becoming like a prodigy, but you're more easy to learn new skills when you're much younger. And that's why like childhood prodigies, especially trying to become an athlete, start fairly young. And inner child is a psychological concept that is something what happens in our childhood, at least before the age of 7, creates memories of what happened when you're young. And also it influence of certain unmet needs, which I think was like very interesting because as a human being, we have certain expectations or even certain ideas of what things that we wish we have or what we really like take it for granted and such. That's what I've noticed, especially like my short experience of being a teacher, like teaching through K to 12. And the biggest difference I've noticed, especially between teenagers and little kids being like 6 or 7, is kids are much more naturally curious, they're much more impressionable, and they're more willing to try things before you stop the uncertainty. If the child is not willing to try something, it's because there's some strong core childhood memory that doesn't want them to try, or they have a sense of uncertainty because of something that has happened to them when they're young. Like, for example, if the parents is always like very cold or like very critical about, let's just say you try writing or drawing, but the parent is very unimpressed, then the child is most likely going to just not attempt again because it's a survival mechanism. Because especially parents are the biggest influence in a kid's life or a guardianship or guardians. And that's definitely what I've noticed, especially along with my journey. A lot of creators, they have like creative blocks, writer's block, artist block, because it stems from the emotion of fear, anxiety, and depression, which I have experienced in it of itself, being a creative and so forth. This is a part that I want to really share a story of myself and how I was able to go back to my childhood interests and memories to find inspiration that it feels. So since I was young, like under the age of 5, I've always loved beautiful things. I like things that are pretty. I wouldn't say glittery, more like some sparkles. I love flowers. I like the idea of ballet, dance, and so forth. But I am not someone who wanted to have quote unquote princess treatment because I don't want to be limited just based on fitting within a box. Because I'm someone who's naturally competitive. I just want to do the best I can. And I'm willing to always try different sports. I like to just run and try things, not just someone who's in the house waiting for someone to do it for me. And yeah, I like beautiful things. I like ribbons, I like flowers and so forth. And I really like good animations growing up. I like it more better than what I call it live acting per se, because good animation to me, especially the ones that I always look forward to, it tends to be like Japanese animation, like Sailor Moon, Mermaid Melody, which is like very young leaning, like The Winx Club, Totally Spies, Pop-Up Girls, a very common theme of the idea of girls being more than just going to school, do the usual routine, but they have a second secret identity. It's like seeing different personalities that's able to express themselves authentically, but in a cute, feminine manner. That was always something that I loved growing up. And I love some cozy aspects. I love some girly aspects with fashion, makeup. And I think the best example is you can still be cheeky and tough, but still look cute. And that was something that I was very drawn to. I also still like pink and blue and all these aspects. And colors definitely a big one because rainbow was something that I've always, because how the colors just were put together, it just always feels like so natural, so much in harmony, and it's just a natural gradient, especially like light being called refracted. I don't remember the exact physics term, but when light hits a crystal, it separates the color waves, which was very cool. And yeah, those are just like the things that were just naturally a part of me since I was young. Another thing that was definitely a huge influence is that I love Barbies growing up. I just love it. Like all the way till at least the age of 10. But the problem came in, especially when I was in the first grade, or even just like about to get into first grade. A lot of my peers often view these kinds of things as, oh, like you can look like cute and stuff like that, but Barbies, no, those are for babies. And at that time, I didn't really understand because it's so pretty. It's so like aspirational. It's so fantastical and all of that stuff. But no, Barbie's and Disney just for babies. You shouldn't be watching it and so forth. And I also felt pressure that you have to grow up very quickly to be accepted into society by everyone around me. And it led to me leading towards an expectation of, in order to be a respectable adult, I have to give up my childhood likes, the animations and stuff like that. Not that I stop completely, because I secretly read or watch things that are in that category, but I just don't tell people about it because the moment I say something that I like, I just knew that I would be judged very harshly because it's just often seen as like lowbrow, which is very interesting nowadays on TikTok that everyone's just embracing that idea of girlhood. And yeah, it was like something that I've blocked because it's viewed as childish, not a grown up way of being. And yeah, I just try to stray away from it, especially like becoming a teenager and going to like art school, college, and so forth. And what was very interesting was when I went to art school to do graphic design and then going into tech, I thought I was just going to be like an adult, going to be like some connoisseur of the fine arts or design and so forth, because that's what grown-ups do. We need to be into like the abstract, the postmodernism, and contemporary art. One thing that really strayed for me is that it's all about people are just wanting to show their intellect, which there's nothing wrong with it, but it's like, where is it coming from? And because of like the world that we were in, especially in the industry, despite being a college student, even like between my peers, I started developing like artist block, designer block. I couldn't get myself to draw on paper or paint on canvas as I used to do before when I was much younger, which going to art classes every week. And realizing this all stems from my natural prone to anxiety. And then this led me to feeling like very worn out because it's like the idea of, oh no, like you shouldn't be just drawing because one, you should be focused on learning the latest software, do your vector illustration, do graphic design, do 3D, like all of these things and stuff. But the problem is that's just not my natural interest. And because I'm more drawn to like like children's illustrations or fashion and things are much more less than perfect, but still has like a creative heart to it. And yeah, I just felt like I was going through the quarter life crisis at the age of 25 that even after I graduate, I realized I just don't want to be in this industry for the rest of my life. But it's not to say that I regret going to art school or going through like an integrated digital media master's in tech because I learned a lot of skills out of it, but I don't want to work in those industries because I just want to able to express my creative voice. And then leading up, I was like, okay, I don't know what to do, so let's go into teaching for in the school temporarily. And I went to teach. I learned a lot. I learned how to deal with personalities, how to be a productive member within the institutions. I learned and met a lot of people that I wouldn't have met beforehand. And then it all led up to like at a certain point that I just want to do something that's creative yet supportive of other people. And that's where it led me to image consultancy. What led to me doing image consultancy is a very funny story. I noticed even from when I was starting to watch beauty YouTube in like the 2016s and so forth, I got very interested to learn about makeup. But even when I was a child or a teenager, I had no interest learning how to apply makeup onto myself, but I like to look how it looks on other people, if that makes sense. But I always had an interest to try to look nice, but I didn't really, it requires a lot of effort. Then it led up to with me going to China, telling my coworkers who are very beauty enthusiasts, they're beauty enthusiasts, and I was telling them about these products that are very popular in Sephora. I was interested what the beauty culture and trends are in Korea, China, and so forth, because we may have the same idea, but there's a different interpretation. Learn about the certain fashion houses, learn about the history, learn about where it all stems from, and so forth. And then I did one color analysis for a short trip on one of the short holidays when I went to Korea and did it. And just from that experience, it's like something that's very unforgettable. I would say it's a pretty good experience for the first time. And I was like, okay, this was fun. And realizing that color and looking good was something that it was always a strong passion of mine. Then things happen and I try to reflect on what is it that I really want to do, but color analysis and image consulting just couldn't leave my mind. I went to do a 5-day course in Japan and learned a lot about it. I realized this is something that I want to really develop and help other people as well because I also have a natural eye to pick up details that the average person won't be able to pick up because of my graphic design experience. And then there's the tech part, which is me trying to promoting myself on my social medias, learning how to communicate ways that digestible because not everyone is an expert, leading up to what makes the client experience much more valuable, able to teach how to apply colors in ways that are much interesting, intriguing, and yet authentic in ways that are not just boring or too much. And if you ask me if I was young and be part of the fashion industry, I'll just respond back saying, I'm not really good at sewing. I wasn't like a knitter or a crocheter or I've never really been interested in the manufacturing aspect of it because the logistics is just too much for me. I've always been interested in fashion editorials, but I just don't like the idea of just writing columns but not making the artwork. So it was just a lot of like cross elimination and realizing I want to do something that's independent. So it's just doing image consulting and making content in and of itself is editorial. So it was very interesting that you never know what life leads you if you tap into your natural strengths. And this is a part that I will explain like 3 ways you could figure out from your childhood by answering these 3 questions. What were your favorite hobbies or pastimes that you enjoy when you were young? Were you an artist, going to art classes? Do you do pottery? Were you someone who's like very into sports and so forth? Were you someone who's just loved like doing like chess clubs, debate clubs, or like just be someone who's in charge of something, because that is definitely like a clue. Because what was very interesting is that I think at least like a physical sport I enjoyed the most is actually ice skating and tennis when I was really young. The problem with ice skating right now for me is that I can't really go to an ice rink because it's more than 2 hour drive away from me, which is not realistic. So the closest alternative that I was able to find was actually ballet, because I like the idea of strength and the artistic side of it, even though I'm a total beginner. But what was interesting, at least those two hobbies for me, was that they're all strongly linked to fashion. Now with like, at the moment, it's the US Open, and everyone's talking about like the fashions and the pop-ups that were happening at the stands, and everyone's talking about how the players are dressed and looking back on things. Tennis and fashion are very closely linked, and it's very understandable as well with ballet. So even just with that, oh, fashion and beauty, who knew? And also, so that's one. Second point is, what are often your favorite colors when you were young? Even just with the colors, it explained like a lot of your personality and stuff. That's one. And the third is, what shows do you enjoy watching, or who were your idols? Whether they are like real people, like actors, models, singers, or like certain, I don't know if you're an academic, who's are like your certain philosophers, scientists, thought leaders. Or it could be like even a fictional character. Is it someone from a book that you enjoy reading? Is it an animated show? Is it a Disney princess? Is it like a Winx Club member? Or trying to think what else can be added. Or is it like a cute cartoon character like Hello Kitty or like My Melody? Like things that you enjoy watching, because it lets you get into an insight of what your personality is and what is it about those shows that resonate with you. And I notice, at least with those shows, it's always the fashion and the colors at the end of the day for me. And after you answer the three of them, you ask yourself this final reflection and approach, asking, how do these three connect with each other and why does it resonate? And with that, you could really come up with the like your own truth of realizing who was it that it was you when you were young. And if you're not able to put a conclusion together, if you want, you could go into ChatGPT or an AI model, put in your answers at least for the first three questions. And then a prompt you could do by asking is, what can you see of these three answers linked together? And what career or creative aspects that I could take out from this? Because it's very important to acknowledge that what we always like when we were young, even if people around us don't understand. Because you never know, like someone from halfway around the world also has the same interest. Because if there's already someone like you, there's gonna be many more. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, because this is something that I discovered recently, just like looking back on it, because things are already happened before you know it. And it's always good to reflect back on things. So I hope you really enjoy this episode. So if you like and want to support, you could always comment and share. The show's available every Wednesday. And I hope you enjoy listening. And if you have anything you want to give feedback on, I'm always more than willing to read and listen, because we always like feedback over here. And thank you again, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye.